Welcome to Journeys Through Sociology, a series of interviews with the Executive Committee of the International Sociological Association. I'm Lolebe Mahanyan, and our guest today is Dr. Emma Porio, who's joining us from Manila. Dr. Porio is a professor and chair of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the Ateneo de Manila University. She received her PhD in sociology from the University of Hawaii and has spent years doing research on issues relating to urban poverty, children, and gender. Currently, her research has been focusing on climate change vulnerability and political economy in Manila. She's also the ex officio chair of the Philippine Social Science Council and has also worked as a consultant for the World Bank, USAID, and various agencies of the United Nations. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Porio.
Thank you, too, for interviewing me for this Journeys in Sociology.
As you know, Dr. Porio, one of the goals of these interviews is to kind of get a glimpse into the history or the journey through sociology of our interviewees. But before we do that, I'd like to just get maybe a sense of some of the work that you're doing currently. So what would you say is one aspect of your work that you're particularly excited about right now?
I'd say teaching and research really excite me because with research, sociological concepts and perspectives becomes alive while I'm in the field and I'm able to share this with my students. So, for example, I'll tell you, I've been doing studies on climate change since 2007, and my students, they do not know that in Metro Manila we have 3 flood basins. And we're living right on a watershed. So my study on climate change particularly, I like it because I'm able to look at from the sociological perspective, the social vulnerability of Metro Manilans, so climate change effects. So I look at issues about, gender, class, and ethnicity and locality. And then I look at their environmental vulnerability, geophysical hazards, which natural scientists just pay attention to when they're looking at climate change. So here, I'm able to show to my students that when understanding climate change, vulnerability and adaptation, especially among the urban poor, you have to look at their social vulnerability in terms of income, livelihood, gender, age, but also you have to look at where they are living. Swamplands, low-lying areas, and their vulnerability becomes multiplied tremendously. Well, I really think my life as a sociologist is exciting, and I hope I also excite my students when I'm able to connect concepts to actual empirical life that we live. And that's also true with my other research now on the political economy of urban poor communities, because it allows you to see why is it that poverty in Metro Manila is seemingly invisible, but yet when you go to the urban poor communities, you see all these densely packed people living there. Yet this is highly invisible, and you can understand. I tell my students, see, the policy of this local government makes it possible that they will stay there. They're not interested in relocating them. So I always tell people, looking at the situations that we find ourselves now from the sociological perspective, and particularly from the idea of politics, creating and being responsible for the distribution of resources, it also determines where people can live and cannot live, how people are able to become rich or not become rich, those kinds of things. I think my students finally see that, why is our city looking like this? Why is it that, we're unable, we have so many brilliant people, but unable to design cities that are livable, sustainable, and the like.
So in that sense, your teaching becomes a way of getting your students to actually engage with the social issues of their own community around them.
hopefully, I want them to know what is their role in creating this kind of society, in creating this kind of city.
So, Dr. Porio, could we also maybe get a sense of what was it that drew you to sociology? So clearly, your work as in teaching students sociology as a way of kind of making sense of the world around them and the social problems that are facing their communities. In your own background, what were perhaps 3 reasons that you were drawn to sociology?
Well, I went to college in the early years of martial law. And I remembered one teacher of mine saying, Philippines is rapidly expanding and modernizing and changing. We need people who can explain why these things are happening and what are the impacts of these broad changes to their lives. And I told myself, I want to be that. And from then on, I was hooked. Uh, and from then on, I was hooked. And in fact, just a year before I graduated, the chair of my department, the demographer William Flieger, recruited me to do large-scale surveys on migration, on fertility, and really testing the efficiency of the registration system. And that's how I got hooked to the discipline. I liked research, but then um, I was also very much involved in social activism. I was teaching farmers their farmers' rights. So martial law became quite risky and hot doing these kinds of things. And one day my mother told me that some soldiers were looking for me in my birthplace. So I decided, and she told me, I decided to go to Manila and pursue my studies in sociology, anthropology, and here I got to work with the founder of our department, the anthropologist Father Lynch, and also Mayor Rosales Homesteiner, who were with the Institute of Philippine Culture, very much into studies on Philippine society and social change and the like. So that basically sort of prodded me to realize that this is a discipline for me, this is a career for me, and that's why I went on an East West Center scholarship to the University of Hawaii, and there I got nurtured also with sociologists like Hagen Koo, Alvin So, Peter Smith Janos, the political scientist Ben Kirkfleet, Robert Stauffer. So I did my dissertation on the political economy of education reforms in the Philippines. But then when I came back, everybody was in 1989. I taught for 10 years there also. When I came back in 1990, everybody was into participatory development, all this democratization and things. So we go do focus groups, process documentation. People were reacting to large-scale surveys, looking at large-scale data. So now you understand why I'm very happy with this current project of mine of looking at the political economy of informal settlers, because now it allows me to go back to some of the things that I was studying in graduate school. And I think it also reflects what is happening out there in the development assistance world. Before they want to look at governance, but they were hesitant to look at power structures. Now they are willing. I think they realize that in the end, power structures, economic structures shape a lot on how resources are distributed in society. So
and
that's why
I know that you've done during the course of your career a lot of policy work, a lot of work on consulting, organizations like, United Nations agencies, for example. So is that one of the ways that you attempt to intervene in that policy is by, emphasizing the kind of larger power relations that shape the implementation of policies?
I will say that policy-oriented research, or research for that matter, for me is a source of happiness and joy, but it also is a source of frustration because, for us sociologists, we know, I think we'd like to know that these structures really are the ones that should be changed or eroded, but there's a larger structure there, basically, that looks at the issue, what the state or government is interested, what the market is interested in, the like. So yes, in a sense, it makes me feel that I'm doing relevant work. It makes me feel that here research is able to maybe um, lead to better housing policies or better resettlement policies and the like.
It's
But on
interesting.
the other hand, it's also a little bit frustrating because in the end, you know that the structures of power can only be eroded so much. Or, for that matter, to what extent your policy recommendation gets really consumed or subscribed by those decision makers. I think you understand that.
Yes, yes, yes. And the other thing I find interesting in the way that you talk about, your experiences of what drew you to sociology is that in many ways it echoes the experiences of a number of other ISA members who we've done interviews with, and particularly those from the global South. So we've had people talk about how they were drawn to sociology in the context of anti-apartheid struggles in South Africa or in the post-independence period in India. And there's also this theme of coming to sociology as a way of addressing the problems, the economic, political, social problems facing nations in the global South.
Yeah, and yeah, for me, the kinds of things I'm facing as a sociologist here in Manila is also faced by other sociologists in Latin America and Africa and other parts of Asia. We always have to, we are in the university, and but at the same time, you're expected to teach, you're expected to do administrative work, do university work, and the like. But at the same time, you're also expected to be relevant. That's on a larger scale. Yet also now with the global rankings of universities, there's also that much pressure to publish in international refereed journals, which oftentimes what they accept, is not exactly related to what are the, pressing issues in your society. So, to be, when you say, what is it to be a sociologist in Asia today, or in Southeast Asia for that matter? And you're always confronted with the demands of your immediate, department, the university, and then the larger society. And then you have to calibrate and balance this. And I must say, it's a very hard thing to balance. But all we can do is try.
And it actually, we're already starting to go into the next question that I wanted to pose for you, which was, some of the challenges you faced as a sociologist. And you've already spoken a bit about, the frustrations of working on policy research, or, some of the challenges of doing sociology in the global South. But what would you identify in the course of your career as being some of the most significant challenges you faced as a sociologist?
Well, number one, I can tell you two or three, four challenges. But number one, really, that I think faces sociologists in the global South is that you have to balance the demands of teaching full time, like in our case, 30 units, and do research, and then do service in the university and to the larger publics outside of the university, here and abroad. Second, it's balancing academic research demanded by journals and academic presses in the north or here, and the policy-oriented research demanded by multilateral institutions and the state, because they're the only ones who can provide research, research grants. The Philippine state is very poor, it doesn't provide much grants for research. So you do research, getting grants or commission research from multilateral institutions, then turn that into something that is consumable or publishable. And then the third really is, and which is correlated to that, is the challenge of being relevant for your colleagues and your country and the state or other, to really have your research that is concretely rooted and can lead to concrete solutions for the social problems of poverty, inequality, environmental degradation, and the like. Yet, you must produce something that is publishable. And oftentimes, a lot of this research that is demanded by the policy-oriented groups are not the kinds that ISI publications would accept. And lastly, I'd say the major challenge is building a professional social science community here and regionally, and and particularly creating a successor generation of sociologists. And that's why I think I'd like to talk about my work in ISA, why I find chairing the task force on early career sociologists, I find that quite meaningful and fulfilling because it links to my work here locally on trying to nurture and create the next generation of social scientists that are rooted in their own political and economic context, that will ask questions, do research about the political context, and contribute to the conceptualizing of this of their cultures and their context, and then being able to perhaps contribute to sociological publications, also programs that really will articulate about us, about third world sociologists, about third world sociological practice and the like. So there are plenty of work to be done in those areas.
Dr. Porio, that's actually something that a number of other people have brought up, the challenge and their commitment to kind of building a new generation of sociologists. And some of the issues that people have brought up is that, the quote-unquote crises at the university, things like budget cuts at universities and slashing of all kinds of social programs around education, and as well as, students being drawn to kind of market-driven fields. So what is your experience with what do sociology departments look like, undergraduate sociology departments? What's the challenge of building them in the Philippines?
Oh, we know that very well. In this department, you have to remember Ateneo de Manila is one of the top elite universities. So our students come from the top, I would say, top 2 or 10% of the income percentile, or maybe 10 to 20%. So their parents want them to get an Ateneo degree, a sheepskin from the top elite university, and want them to make money. So you can see in our universities, the top enrolling institutions or colleges are the School of Business, Psychology, and other, I'd say disciplines that really very much have a high currency in the job market. So it is a very, I'd say, it's an uphill struggle for us to basically argue in this, given this, larger forces that are impinging on us, that, hey, to be a sociologist is to be a good social analyst. It's good, you can use the sociological skills anywhere, in the job place, and the workplace, and the market, and things like that. So, yes, I never thought that I will have to market my department. In the 1990s, we just wait for students. But now in this market-driven academia, we have to, we have to assert who we are, what can we do for you, how can we make your career more exciting, things like that. So, it's very real, Ale. Yeah. I think this is not only a case for us, but I think that's a case for the rest of the country and the region, maybe the other parts of the world, because our discipline is not connected right away with exciting careers or large bucks. Mm-hmm. So I am talking to my students now that, if you have a good mind, a good analytical head, a sensitive, politically in a way grounded spirit and mind, you can be productive, you can make money, just do it with the best that you can be.
Yes, yes. Yes. So, and the last question I'd like to ask you, Dr. Porio, is, if you yourself had not pursued a path in sociology, can you imagine, is there something else that you would have liked to have pursued?
My mother wanted me to be a medical doctor because, for practical reasons, we had all the books of my brother in medical school, and he was pretty successful. I come from a family of traditional professions: engineer, doctors, lawyers. They cannot understand what a social scientist, or for a sociologist for that matter.
Yes.
So, but I'd say if I were given another chance, I was thinking at that time, had I known at that time that you can pursue medicine, but do research, I think I'll be a medical researcher.
Really?
But I don't mind being reincarnated as a sociologist. I always tell people I'm very happy I'm a sociologist because I can understand a lot of things from the micro, meso, and macro levels, and hopefully I'm able to craft decisions and actions based on this insight. I'm not too sure, I tell my students, I'm not too sure a lot of people really understand their life and the larger forces that shape them. And I think if you do that, you have the basic formula for living a very fulfilled, happy, and contented life. What do you think?
I think so too. And I think that's a wonderful way to end a wonderful interview. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Porio. It's been a really fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much too. I really enjoyed our conversation and hope to see you someday soon somewhere.
I hope so too. This has been another journey through sociology with Dr. Emma Porio. We hope you join us next time.